Welcome. You're tuned into Life is a Sacred Journey. Every week, we bring a new perspective to aging and caregiving. Here is your host, Micheal Pope. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you in the virtual neighborhood of Life is a Sacred Journey. I want to thank you for getting up early, or if it's afternoon, or if you're my sister in France, thank you for staying up to watch and participate in this wonderful conversation. I am thankful to Jason Matthews from Matthews Financial for coming back today to have a conversation. I have been hearing so much about the financial markets, and even this morning coming into ASAB, heard a great deal about what Miss Yellen or Mrs. Yellen is doing at the U.S. Treasury around money and all kinds of things. So Jason, welcome back to Life is a Sacred Journey. And all my buds out there, please hit the share button. Let people know we've gone live, and get your paper and pencil, because I have some questions that I think will be helpful to you. And then if you have questions, I got my phone here. I am going to be trying to keep a look at Facebook for any questions that you may have around your finances or questions that you may have for Jason. So good morning, Betty and Wanda and Teresa, and hit that share button. Good morning, everybody. Okay, Jason, this is my first question. I heard that there is going to be a child tax fund, earn tax. I haven't gotten it in a long time, so I don't know.
Child tax credit.
And it's a pilot, so it's not something at the moment that is a permanent thing. It's a pilot. And explain to our community what that means.
So the child tax credit is for people who have children 18 and under, where they increased the child tax credit now to kids to be $3,600. Upon that, what they're doing is cutting a check early. So it's a pre-credit that you're receiving, which you're mailing out to people in a roughly amount of $1,600 that people might have received yesterday or should be receiving in the next couple of days. If you have a child who's 4 and under, there's additional $600 bump. Most of Americans should be receiving that direct deposit within the next, either yesterday or within the next coming weeks and months and days. And they're going to be direct deposit unless they do not have your banking routing number for you. Oh. If that's the case, they're going to actually have to mail it to you. And they have that by, if you have filed, when you file your taxes, if you got a tax refund, or you gave them a payment, they have that on file for themselves.
So if somebody is living below the poverty line and not doing taxes, but yet we know these are our communities that have children that are living in poverty, how will they benefit from this?
They should go to the IRS, let them know about it, register, give their information, and a check will be mailed to them. A regular check will be mailed to them directly. If you have moved in the last year or two, then you haven't filed taxes as well, I would recommend you go to IRS so they have your information, so it doesn't get mailed off to your old home and you never receive that check.
Yes. So this is important, folks, and this is important for you to share in your context and any place that you are. And I hope that the faith-based community will pick up on this, particularly our communities of color, where we know where people are living under the poverty line and they maybe didn't have taxes or they move frequently to accommodate Section 8 and all of these kinds of things. Get the information out, because if they contact the IRS, make sure they have the correct address, give them the correct information about the number of children that they are in their care, they can benefit from this pilot. And I know Mrs. Yellen from the U.S. Treasury said on NPR this morning that she would love to see this be a benefit long term, because we also know when we lift children's lives out of poverty, we also benefit their families. Jason, before we move to the next question, do you think this is a viable benefit? I don't know what to call it, tax break benefit that we should take on long term?
It seems like it is something that we need to take on long term. And here's the reason why. The main issue we are having in this country overall is declining birth rates, which we've been having since 2008. And it's not just an American thing, it's just in the Western Europe world. You see in Japan and China as well, where people are having less children. What
Okay.
they want to do is because of the cost of children, you have younger people who are saying, hey, I'm not going to have two, three, four, five, or might not even have children at all compared to previous generation because of the cost of having children. So this tax credit might stimulate the birth rates, so we have more people giving children. The reason birth rates is so important is if we have less children, which means we're going to eventually have less adults, that means we're going to have less people paying taxes and generate revenue to pay for Social Security, Medicare, and things down the road. So it's highly important that we have more children because we always need more workers to feed the system. And if you don't have that, then you have another problem, which we're seeing in Japan. You see in China where they got rid of the one
One
child
child
rule.
policy. Yes,
Yep, they
yes.
got rid of it because less and less people are even having that one child, and they know that hey, we need more than just one. We need two or three as well. So we're having this problem across the world right now where people simply is not having as many children as possible. And this tax credit is good, but there's in Europe and other places they have way better programs for as taking care of daycare for people. In
Yes.
Japan, I believe they give people about around roughly $15,000 to have a child. So they
Yes.
have better programs than we do because they're trying to entice people having more children, which they're
Yeah.
simply not anymore.
And the family structure itself, the disintegration of that by not having children, and then that generational wealth, generational caring, all of these kinds of things are impacted by a lower birth rate. And then, of course, it impacts the financial status of that country. And you may bring up a very valuable point. I was told by my sister in France during the pandemic, everybody received an average of what their paycheck was prior to the pandemic while they were sheltering in place, which kept them as they began to come out of the pandemic and sheltering in place. They didn't have people bouncing out in poverty or unsheltered or any of those kinds of things. Why in our country then, if we're the land of milk and honey and we have so much, what is that split in the caste? You know, Isabel Wilkins has a great book called Caste. She talks about that this caste system within our capitalistic system is something that really is hurting us in more ways than one. But then why do we embrace it so? You know, with the taxes, like people making over $400,000 a year are upset that they're being taxed more. Are you kidding me? Versus somebody who makes, what, $20,000 a year with six people in the family trying to make it, and the people making more than 400,000 are mad that we want minimum wage to be between $15 and $17, which is not a living wage. So, Jason, what is that mentality around money and the way we live with it?
I always say money is our religion in America, and we don't have a true capitalistic society because true capitalism is where you're a business where you have this entrepreneur dream, you grow the business. If you make a mistake, then you fail, then you start over. What we have is social capitalism, which means you have these huge conglomerates who have moved up in the world, move up the ladder, might have failed, but they get bailed out from the government. And because of that, we don't have true capitalism, which affects us this. Those people are not failing. They make sure that if they do fail, that they are bailed out. So oftentimes what we're seeing is we have people we hate to see this, but we have corruption by major corporations by funneling money towards lobbyists and other lobbyists to our senators, Congress people, to make sure that they survive, they continue to grow, and they get stimulus while other people who are struggling don't have the manpower or the money, I should say, and the resources to do the same thing. So they struggle while the people up top are taking full advantages of the bailouts that they get, the stimulus package that they get. Because yeah, we talked about this $3,600 tax credit, but we're not talking about how Amazon had this huge bailout during this period of time during COVID and other entities as well, but yet they refuse to increase the tax rates on them or avoid taxes because oftentimes they have so much money that they're the ones who are actually writing the tax code and the tax bill for themselves, and while everybody else is just sitting back struggling as well.
But again, if you have a society I mean, this is what I don't understand. And again, I did take economics in college, but it was a long time ago, and micro and the other. But when you look down into that, let's just say if we had we were looking down into that, we end up spending more money than revenue tax dollars on fixing what that model creates?
We borrow from it, but the wealthy still avoid all the taxes. Amazon still paying 0% taxes. You still got Google, Apple, all these corporations who are paying 0% in taxes and federal income taxes. So then our government has to borrow the money, which we're seeing the effects of it with this inflation, where they're borrowing the money for all this because major corporations are simply just avoiding paying taxes. The problem is we're not worried about the greater good. Everybody's only worried about the self, or and that's the problem we're having. It's different than World War II, where everybody's like, for citizens, I say I'll worry about the greater good as citizens. I won't say corporations, because there was a huge battle between corporations and businesses and citizens during World War II, and I think we're back at that. I just don't. I think overall citizens are just content, or what I like to say, beat up like the Cleveland Browns, or sorry to say, or
Yes,
you're an Oakland Raider fan where you so beat up where you don't protest. But if you see during World War II, there was walkouts because people felt like the labor treatment, the
yes.
cost, the money that they're receiving, and how much these corporations were making from government contracts, that people walked out and protested. And because of that, we got a lot of changes happen after that period of time where the corporations like, we're losing money. But now I think overall we're content on whatever we have, where we just don't say anything. We're almost like we're beat up. We're the Cleveland Browns or Oakland Raiders. We're just used to losing and not getting the benefits, where you just say it is what it is. And we're so distracted nowadays as well.
So why is it that the people who run these federal programs and all get to live a lifestyle, one that allows them to live in neighborhoods where they thrive, their health thrives, but yet the money that funnels through those departments and into the community is a very small percentage. The most of that money goes to the administration of these departments and all of that. There's something wrong. I'm just trying to figure out, if you make $1 billion, if you bring in $1 billion worth of revenue, you helped me here at Alzheimer's Services of the East Bay as our board president, and if we bring in $1 million worth of revenue, and yet our operational expenses and all of that are more than that to provide care, then we can't provide the care. At some point, the rubber band snaps.
Right.
It's the same thing in the economy. If people don't get enough income in order to live, then how do we expect to ever get rid of poverty? And maybe we don't wanna, because what's the living wage? What is it? What would the living wage be if we really were paying people a living wage? What would that be? Do you know?
I do not. But think about this: as a country, this country is built on cheap labor, right? And that's the basis of America. Is always, how can we get the cheapest labor?
Cheap
It
labor.
went from slavery, where labor was
Yep.
free. Then
Yep.
we went from immigrants, where we brought Italians and Irish to this country. Then we had the Chinese working on the railroads for cheap labor in the hopes of the American dream. And then we had the great migration of blacks going to the north and to the west.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then after that, we had globalization, where we start sending jobs and the NAFTA thing to Asia, to Taiwan and China, and then Mexico as well. And now we're using technology for it. So America is built on cheap labor. The question is, when do we want to change our foundation, where it's not about cheap labor, but actually being a source of, we want everybody to be able to thrive and take advantage of what we call the American dream. That's the question. Is we want to change our fundamental foundation of we're not about cheap labor, but really taking care of our fellow man, and not just when we have an emergency after 9/11, where we all come together, but actually
Right. That's right.
have a true foundation of, we really want to help out the greater good of everybody.
Yes. And to me, then you create a society where people actually thrive. Does that model exist that you just described anywhere in the world?
You see a lot of Norwegian countries. You see it in Netherlands, and
Norwegian?
Norwegian, a lot of Norwegian countries, but that's not here in America.
Okay.
Netherlands, Switzerland, but you don't see it here in America. And I just think that's because our basic principle and foundations about cheap labor. And then the people who represent us, who make the laws, don't represent us at all. And the reason being is if you look at it, if you had a true republic or democracy, you have people from variations of fields who are in Congress and so on and so forth. But if you look at Congress, most of them all look the same. They're all mostly 85, 9% of them, all backgrounds are attorneys. So they oftentimes don't represent who you are. And then they're not actually meeting with the people besides their photo ops. But compared to how often they're meeting with lobbyists, I just think lobbyists are there constantly in their office every day pushing for different bills to be passed that helps them instead of what's great for the greater good. And that's the problem. We're not balanced right now. There's too many of the same things, which makes not a balancing act happen. Until we really say, hey, this is not okay, and we truly fundamentally say that, then things will change.
All right, so we've begun this conversation going into the history, and I really thank you for teaching me today and embracing. I mean, I got a lot going through my head right now, but that whole concept of cheap labor really is starting to resonate with my spirit, because that is being in the nonprofit field. That's what people do to us. And again, I'm not begrudging any funding that we've ever received from any foundation or corporation or anything. But when we're told that our administrative costs have to remain below a percentage, that means there are people within the organization that are not making a living wage. And that just bothers me. And then we have to figure out how to cover benefits and things when larger organizations are saying, oh, no, we're not covering those benefits. And so we get to carry the burden of the greater good, and the corporations get to go and have the white picket fence, and everybody gets to live in a house. So I don't know how to settle with that. That's weird to me as a human being, but it's a concept that I think that we, all of our listeners and all of us out there in the Life is a Sacred Journey platform, we need to start thinking about that and having those conversations in our context, within our faith-based communities, within our communities. There is a disparity on how we are living. I have the great blessing to walk into a home every single day that has electricity, water, I got grass, I got so I can come out into the world a whole human being because I have everything that I need. And I have money that I can even go buy what I want, sometimes to excess. But when not everybody just has what they need, we are creating a caste system that we will never get out of. And the people at the bottom is getting, can we go any lower than we already are?
I think the fear that everybody has historically is that we eventually have more protests and government rebellion from it. We're seeing right now in Cuba where people are protesting because their quality of life diminished. You see right now in Ethiopia, there's a civil war as well. You see in South Africa. So there's periods where people are upset, and we'll see more protests regarding it because people feel like they're not getting fed. And what the promises that the government said they're supposed to bring is simply just not being there. That's going to be the issue, is when people are fed up. The question is, due to technology, will that happen? Because we're so distracted now based off of social media. And also with the algorithms, will you actually see the truth about what's going on? Or they're distracting with the algorithms that you see in social media and not what's actually going on in the real world?
Now, that's a valuable conversation, because I just watched. This is amazing. I love talking to you, Jason. Jason comes to the office periodically, sometimes weekly when we have a lot going on here. And he and I do the business, and then we have these like round robin conversations just like this. We're both intellects. We love to read and we love history. And so we begin to see the patterns of our behavior as human beings based on what is happening in the outside. And when you talk about technology and social media, when we begin to let that be the way that we make decisions on how now, this platform here is social media. But what I'm trying to bring to you is data for you to make choices. I'm not telling you how to make the choice. Whereas I was a part of a conversation the other day that became a part of a logarithm or algorithm. And all of a sudden, after the conversation was over on social media, I started getting all this stuff, these emails that were in a total alignment with that conversation. And so I began to understand this algorithm thing a little bit better, that we're being watched basically. And everything we say gets dropped somewhere in the universe. But at the end of the day, Jason, we've got to focus on what you just said is the common good. And that applies to the financial structure as well. So before I ask you some of the questions that have come in, would you explain to me what this new currency, and to the audience, those of us that are baby boomers that don't understand it fully, this new currency that people are making money on and becoming millionaires? Is that true? What is this currency called again?
So you have right now you have this cryptocurrency
Crypto.
wave.
Yeah, what is that?
So cryptocurrency, I break down cryptocurrency. Not everybody made a million. There's a lot of people who lost money.
Okay.
A lot of people over the last 4 months. So what cryptocurrency is a way or a currency where people. All right, let's talk about what currency and money is. It is
Okay.
exchange for goods and services. So if I have let's say I have a banana and I want to trade you for the banana, I'll give you some type of dollar or currency. So right now, there's a bunch of new currencies, digital currencies are coming out, which we call cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Right now, it's not a totally valid way for we can actually exchange goods for the money. So people pay for that currency and hopefully that you trade it. Right now, there was people, if you got into the early portion of it, and always the key is you got to get into things early. You could have made money because as more people bought that crypto, put cash into the cryptos, the money, the value of that cryptocurrency went up. But what happens is if somebody sold or dumped or people stop believing in that crypto or take their money out, then the price dropped. So for instance, Bitcoin had this huge run up where people were buying it and it's very volatile, but then people stopped doing it and it dropped 50%. So if you're one of those people who heard the hype and you was part of the sheep who raised that price up, you right now have lost 50% of your value unless you hold on to it. But a lot of people might cash it out. You see the same thing in your Ethereum and all these different cryptocurrencies where we're figuring out which type of digital currency is we're going to actually use for exchanges. And there's some issues behind them as well right now. But it's a battle of cryptocurrency, and people, especially young millennials, are saying this is a way that you get
Yeah.
rich or wealthy. But if you're not in it, like I'll say anything, if you're in it late, you're probably going on the top of the high peak of it. You could take a lot of losses, and you're seeing that right now, where people buy a lot of Bitcoin and they drop 50%, and some people sold it because they can't deal with the volatility. And then you have some people who's riding it. Hopefully, it goes back up. We just don't know when it will go back up. It might be 5 months, 6 months, 7 years, 8 years. We just simply don't know.
Okay. Do you think that we'll ever move from the currency model that we have now to no currency whatsoever and more things like Venmo? And I mean, do you think that currency will ever go away?
No. So what we will always have the currency and money. You'll always be exchanging money. It might be on a more of a digital platform, but we will continue to exchange money and currency. It won't be cash. It might not be check, but we'll additionally all exchange for goods and resources with it. And we might use Venmo, Cash App, and all that. And let me say this as well: Venmo, Cash App, and then with these fintech companies for exchange money is not safe and secure. I use it, but I'll let people know that. So, which means this: when you give your money to the bank and you give a check, that check is back and you know it's there. Or if you have your bank card, the money's back. If I give you exchange, if I exchange, and this is, I read this report yesterday or this article.
Okay.
If I exchange something on Venmo or I buy it or transfer money on Venmo, so on and so forth, and I give the wrong address or somebody hacks it, the bank or no bank, since it's not a bank, there's no guarantee I will not get that money back if something goes wrong. So
Oh,
people have to realize that a lot of these fintechs are not a bank, so the money is not backed by the promises of the government and the bank compared to if you use banks. So I just would like to give people that heads up. as more and more we're seeing people do fraud. There's more fraud on the accounts. People hack. So one hack I'll give you guys, one is be careful, is that somebody asks somebody, can they use your cell phone, is one fraud, where they say, hey, I lost my cell phone, I need to make a call to my girlfriend on the street, and the person pretend they're making a call, but you just use your Cash App and transfer money to themselves.
Oh, wow. Okay. So again, everything around stupid money and capitalism and all of this puts us in a position where the common good can sometimes come back and bite you. So you're trying to do something kind and wonderful, and somebody uses your phone to, you think, for an emergency call, and they're hacking into your stuff. Wow.
Hit that, send it, boom, and then there's nothing they can do. You can't get the money back. Cash App is not responsible for it. Venmo is not responsible. Zelle's not. So you just take a loss.
Wow.
And there's a bunch of, I know there's a bunch of different frauds with it, which is crazy right now.
Wow. Okay. So that's a new that. Thank you for sharing that. The next question that I have is there's an older woman. She is already retired. Her retirement monies are being handled by a Lincoln or, one of those companies. And it's about $300,000. But she just got her statement, and she only made like $12 in the last 9 months. And she's wondering, something's wrong. Is that possible?
So that is possible. And the reason being is depends on where she has her money right now. Because right now, interest rates are at historical lows. She could just be having that money inside of a money market or savings account. But if it's like at a Lincoln or using investment houses in a money market, and right now, current money market rates are at 0.01 or 0%. So she's not going to get anything at it because it's in a money market anywhere at very low interest rates or even a CD. So the problem is our traditional safe vehicles have historically low interest rates right now, which hurts us a lot of times when it comes to money.
So what would your advice be? Would she have to go back to the managing company to talk to them about moving those funds to a more, you have $300,000, you just turned 70. You need that money for a good 20-something years to live off of. So do you leave it at this 0.01%, or do you take a chance? Because to not make money on it in a year, to only get a check for $12 when you were getting checks in the past for $2,000 on your dividend.
So here's how I look at money in retirement. You have to look at how much money do you need for your basic expenses every month. How much I need on the first of every month? How much I need coming in every month to pay for my expenses? Upon that should tell me how much safe money I need. If there is a gap between your Social Security and your pension, and this is my strategy, if there's a gap between your pension and your Social Security, you usually try to cover that gap with what we call with a lifetime income annuity. What the annuity do would give you a guaranteed stream of income covering that gap. Whatever that number is, you want to have to put money into annuity to cover that basic expenses gap. The rest of your money, you want to have your advisor look at putting together a portfolio that's going to hedge against taxes and inflation. And because of that, at that point, you want to take more risk. But the annuity is going to give you the guarantees that you need for your monthly income. Whatever amount is remaining, you want your money to be growing to cover inflation and then also the taxes that might remain in the future.
All right. Retirement. We're going to talk about that for a minute because these are the questions that are coming up. So when this person planned well, worked for an organization, they had a 401k where they matched it. That's becoming a thing of the past. I'm hearing more and more within organizations, but still happening in corporate America. What about, and I always want to talk about people that don't have the opportunity, like their whole life, they were raising their kids. I'm that person. Raising their kids, putting the money into the house, keeping the roof, putting their kids through college, put a little bit aside, but then always the car broke down and, So you find now, I'm getting ready to retire, or I want to retire. That person really does have to plan to work for the rest of their life, don't they?
They have to plan on working for the rest of their life at some aspect or some way. They will. Strategies, if they don't have enough retirement income, is they might look at refinancing or doing reverse mortgage on their home. They might have to pick up a part-time job. They should look at their social security and see how much that's going to be. But yeah, it's going to be very tough. And I think it's a world where we're seeing that more and more, where people are really not going to retire, or maybe you have to live outside the country or your normal community. Maybe you might have to
Oh,
leave, or you might have to leave California and go somewhere else where the cost of living is a lot cheaper as well.
and I've been seeing a migration of that. People, older people moving out of, unless they already like they own their home and they're okay. And we do know that there's lots of people out there that way, and this is not an issue for them. But for some, it is. And you're finding that they're taking that whatever they have and going to places like West Virginia, or where the cost of living is so much less. And what does that do to the an economy like California when you have the retirees migrate out? Does it
What
change?
what it does is this: your workforce will get smaller and lesser, and you'll have more families detached. I know I have a good friend named Norm. He lives in Costa Rica, and he says you'll in the Central America you have a lot of expats who live down there because you can live off of $3,000 a month without stressing over money, and you have a great lifestyle because you're right next to the beach and jungle and tropics. But you're having a lot of that happening because of the cost of living.
Okay.
The problem is when you have retirees who getting a pension, or getting a state pension, and they leave out of the state, that means your tax revenues is paying for somebody's retirement and leave the state. Now all that money is never coming back into the state, so they lost revenue for the state.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, but wait a minute. Now I'm taking money that I would normally spend and create revenue, sales tax. Now I'm taking it somewhere else. I'm not even, but this is happening quite a bit. And I'm finding that people are doing that. Now, you mentioned reverse mortgage. What is the reverse mortgage is a benefit, but can it also not be a benefit?
And you have to have proper planning with reverse mortgage. So a reverse mortgage, what that says is you're using your house as a loan to yourself. Upon you moving out of your house, either through death or you have to move out for some reason or not, your loan is now due within nine months after that.
Okay.
At that point, and so with that using your home, you got that loan, which either could be a lump sum or monthly payments. At that point, you're going to have to pay that loan. If you're unable to pay that loan, then they say, hey, you're going to have to sell your home, and you get what you get, and we get what we want from the loan. The problem with reverse mortgages is that oftentimes there's lack of family planning when it comes to reverse mortgages. So a family member might think they're supposed to inherit his house, or did not know a family member had a reverse mortgage. So when their family member passes away and they owe 400,000 or 500,000, they're scrambling to pay off that mortgage upon that time. If not, they have to sell the home. Well, they didn't talk about as a family. Do we want to keep this home in the family? How we want to take care of our loved ones? What should we do? And that's where the issues comes from reverse mortgages, lack of planning. Because one plan you could do is, I know grandma's going to pass away. I'm
Yeah.
going to refinance the house at that point, or I can refinance it now and take out the cash or pay for her income at that point, and I'm willing to pay for it. Or you know what? I know grandma about to get this reverse mortgage, or mom is. Let me buy a life insurance policy to cover that loan, so if she passes away, I could go ahead and pay it off if I want to keep the home.
Oh, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you know what? She said we don't want to live there anyways. Let her use her money however she wants to use her money. So those are the things we have to consider. But with the lack of family planning, that's when people get their feelings hurt. People are shocked and astonished and not prepared for that day when it comes.
Should people begin to liquidate their assets as they get older, meaning the assets that are liquidable, that to turn into cash and get rid of some of the things around them?
I would not say that. I think what the better thing is to do is do proper planning and have start doing more trust and family planning within your trust and work, and not just give money to them, but actually have a plan and rules on using the money. A perfect example of that is the Rockefeller family, where they made rules and regulations on how money should be used and not used. When we don't do that and you leave the cash left over, then our family, our kids and stuff misplace or do misguided moves with the money. But we can put restricted rules to protect our kids from themselves or whoever our loved ones are, from lawsuits, from creditors, from taxes. Then we can keep some of that money and use it for a great benefit that we actually want to happen.
And this is what I always also, and I want to ask your question. I just got a letter from California. They're starting a, what do they call it? I meant to bring it to ask you about it, but it was about my funeral plans. Like they have an insurance plan or something, the state of California. They're like, have you handled your end of life dippity doo-dahs? And if not, there's a plan that the state is going to be administering. And of course, everybody knows I've already purchased my tree, I've already paid for my cremation and all of that. But why would the state start to do that? That's insurance, isn't it?
State wants to get in the insurance business a little bit, and that's because there's so many people who have GoFundMes who don't have the money for it, where the state don't want to see all these empty bodies in the morgue who's not getting claimed because nobody has insurance or taking advantage of having those insurance and the rules for that. And I think that's important that we don't, because the lack of planning that a lot of families and individuals are doing.
So the state of California has gone into the insurance business, which is not life insurance, but the piece of insurance, the burial. It's basically burial insurance. I'll remember to bring it so I can share it with you, audience. But it came to me and I was just like, I sent it back to them going, nope, I already got that handled. But at the end of the day, it was very inexpensive. I think it was like $50 or some amount. And so if you get that in the mail, take a look at it, see if it's something that you need or somebody needs, because do we still have Potter's Field? Do we still bury people in Potter's Field? I remember that was something, one of the largest Potter's Field is in New York City, and that's where people whose bodies were never claimed, or I think now we cremate them. I don't even think they get buried. I'm not sure about that, but
I believe, but I'm not positive, but I think they get cremated as well.
Yeah, I don't think they do that anymore. All right, so now I heard that in Oakland, and I want to make sure we're telling this story correctly because I'm not sure, because I'm not an Oakland, Alameda County voter. Something was voted on where the sales tax went up by 10%, or did it go up to 10%?
So July 1st, most of the Bay Area's counties, even Contra Costa, sales tax went up to above 10%.
Wow.
So yeah, it costs more through taxes to buy goods, but yeah, sales tax went up. So right now, Alameda sales tax went up to, let me get the exact number, and it just happened July 1st across the state.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So it went up 10.25%, and you see it for most of the Bay Area, where the tax rates have went up.
So that's the sales tax on everything, right?
On everything. So you had it in Alameda County. Like I said, Alameda County, you saw it go up countywide. You also see it in the city of San Jose, Milpitas, their tax rates went up. So sales tax overall, a lot of cities went up July 1st.
Wow. So the extra sales tax money goes to the state government to be disseminated out in its different ways that it does. But what do you feel the impact of an increase like this within Alameda County that has one of the largest low-income populations? I'm confused.
Yeah, so what it's going to do is going to make it more expensive for people to buy the basic necessities and goods that they normally do. So you go grocery shopping, you're going to pay a little bit more money now. And at the same time, we did a statewide gas tax increase slightly as well. So people pay more for gases. People pay more for gas to go to work and back, and people are going to pay more for the food and necessities, and with the increased sales tax.
And not only the increased sales tax, but also because we're in an inventory quagmire because of the shelter in place and the pandemic and moving goods around. So goods are not being moved around, and it's close to us and it's taking longer to get things and so forth. So do you think that we will ever get back to a place where we will bring some of our production back out into the States and from China and from these other places to bring jobs back to the United States? Or is that stupid?
I hope so. I think that's a lesson that should be learned out of COVID is we should be bringing some of the jobs back, because right now what you have is a huge supply glut that's going on right now all over, tons of products throughout this in the world right now. especially in America where we have a huge consumption, is the
Hmm.
supply gut. One
Hmm.
of them came from COVID with the shipping in China and everything. You had already had the Suez Canal, so it's hard to get the iPhone as well.
Yes.
And now we have like the microchip shortage. So now some used cars cost more than brand new cars. Used cars that are 1 or 2 years old are costing more than new cars at the same time. Um, and so we have this huge glut, which is going to be a lot more expensive for people to live. And hopefully, off the lesson of COVID, we'll have more and more people, not coming, but more companies say, hey, let's bring some of these jobs back here in these factories, because if we have another bump in the road like we look like we're having right now with this shortage of glove, that now we won't have these issues that we have from other places.
I am so thankful to hear that because, again, this is not a thing about whether I like China or don't like China or anything of those things. But I was in my house and as many of you know, I've been meditating and spending a great deal of time just, healing from my brother's passing. And so I've been looking at the stuff in my house, and just kind of picking things up and doing what people do when they don't have anything else to do but live with their brain. And I noticed a lot of stuff except for the older things. Like I have some old furniture that's over 50 years old that was made here. But the stuff that I've purchased in the last 2 decades, it all says made in China.
Yeah.
Every single last item. And I was just like, wow, we can't produce this stuff. So wait a minute, this is what's happening to me right this second. Why did it leave? Why are these industries, did we allow ourselves to take those businesses that work away from the United States? Because wasn't the majority of that work done by the middle class?
Yeah, but you got cheap labor and cheap goods. They sold you
Back
a
to the
bag of
cheap
beans.
labor thing.
It's the basics
Wow.
of America. Cheap labor. It was a way to get cheap labor. They told America it was a good trade to start trading with China, which was good for the big businesses, but it was bad for the working class folks in America, the blue collar, middle class workers, because now, yeah, you got things cheaper at Walmart, but now you don't have jobs that were paying the same, and the quality of goods went down because you started loving the cheap labor, which America is built on.
And the quality of goods. Thank you for that, Jason. Like I said, I have a table at my house that's 36 years old. And I flipped it over because I was just curious to see how it was made. It's huge, it's heavy, it's amazing. And you can tell that every piece of that was sanded by a human being, that it was cut by a human being with great stretches. So the table is solid as a rock. There's another table that's out in the garage that I bought from a store that I won't say, but it's the cheapest thing in the whole wide world. I've only owned it for 5 years and it's in the garage right now because it's falling apart.
Sounds right.
And I paid more for it than I paid for the table that I bought over 30 something years ago that was made somewhere here, I think in Arizona, it said somewhere in the Midwest, maybe. So we stop liking quality too as citizens of the United States. Do we not know quality anymore? Is it really just about how money? I'm lost.
Yeah, so we like cheap goods and services. The reason why people start buying out Walmart, why we start liking Ford Goods, it gives people extra, the major businesses, a huge profit margin. But we like cheap stuff. Let's just be honest. We like cheap stuff, and we start watering down what we say made in America. We watered down, saying that the quality of American built stuff is crap. So it was easy for it. We got the bag of goods that say Americans don't make good quality stuff, and we sent the jobs to China, Vietnam, and Mexico, wherever else is cheap. And we didn't appreciate the quality of work that we did ourselves. We started listening to the bag of goods that America don't make anything good, and we believe that.
Wow. Okay. I have one more question before we run out of time here. Again, you have joined Life is a Sacred Journey. My name is Micheal Pope. I am the host, and you are here with Jason Matthews, CEO, founder, creator of Matthews Financial. Jason, how do people get a hold of you if they want to continue this conversation about their finances? I mean, I'm going to have to sit down with you because I'm in trouble. How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can give me a call at 510-229-7608, or you can email me at Matthews, Matthews, financial@gmail.com.
And it's important. I keep telling young people, when you start having a career and you're moving forward, you really need to sit down with somebody like Jason to figure out your long-term strategy, no matter what it may be, no matter how much money you bring in. And I remember when my children were little, and I finally found it again on Amazon because I'm going to buy some and send them to my godchildren. And it was a 3-cylinder box. Now it's made out of plastic and la la la. And it was to share. So that meant money that you were going to either tithe at the church, because that's where it began, or money that you were going to share with somebody else, that you were going to donate. That's your philanthropic money. Spend money that you want to save to spend on something, or for that cup of coffee, or for that ice cream sandwich once a month. And then save. And the whole idea when I taught my children this is that that's what money is all about. It is a tool. And you have 3 sections that you need. Some people only have 2. It's about spending and saving. But for my family, it was also about giving back. So they've learned this process, and everybody is surprised when I tell them. And again, I'm not tooting my own horn, Jason, but what I'm telling you is that when my 22-year-old daughter graduated in May and left my home and is running her finances and doing all her stuff, people said, "How come?" I said, well, Dave Ramsey, 1, because we did Financial Peace University, the whole family, 1. 2, they learned at an early age that money was a tool. And I didn't want them to repeat my mistakes, because I didn't know nothing about credit when I came out into the credit world. I didn't know nothing about, and it wasn't because my family weren't, they just didn't have time to teach us. They were struggling. They were first generation wealth, meaning being able to buy a house or, whatever. How important is it for us as older folks to teach the young people about money and its lack of credibility, all the aspects of it? Jason, will you share with us before we end? How important is that?
I think it's so important. I think if not, we're just giving people, if we don't teach people about money, our society is going to teach them about money. And if our society teaches them about money, all they're going to learn is consumerism, how to spend money. Because 2/3 of our economy is consumerism. So they want us to constantly buy, buy, buy. I think our job is to teach our children in our community about the importance of money and how money can be a great source and a resource for great ways. And it doesn't matter how much money you make. So a perfect example is I have one of my clients, I worked with this family, and their aunt passed away at 90 years old. And she came from a sharecropping family in Mississippi. She worked as a maid in the hotels in San Francisco. When she passed away, when this sister passed away, she had multiple apartment complexes in San Francisco, had houses in Pittsburgh, and the reason, and all she was a maid at a hotel. And that's because she was smart. Not just that she was smart, but she was a saver. She got financially, and then she learned about the importance of money. When we see these gaps of challenges that we see in life, as far as people getting in trouble, we hear the disparity of the Bells program. We hear about public offenders. We hear about student loan crisis. That is because there's lack of wealth going on in the community. And if we can teach and educate people about the importance of wealth and not just donating it to a local bar, to the club, to young people, and we can minimize that instead of donating it to Amazon and so on and so forth. But understand the importance of what money's supposed to do, which is supposed to make our family and our lives a little bit easier on in this life instead of having so many stressful challenges. I think that's where it would be so much beneficial for the community is when we truly understand the importance of money. A perfect example of that, I always recommend tell people, is if you look at that famous case of the kid in New York who was a Khalif. I'm trying to remember his last name, but they say he stole somebody's backpack and he was in Rutgers Island for 3 years. I think he was adopted. His bail was about 13,000. His family didn't have money for bail. He wanted to keep saying, they kept trying to give him a plea guard. He said, I didn't steal the backpack. But the abuse that he's had at Rikers Island in New York, and
Yeah.
finally they quit him, he was so mentally disturbed afterwards that he eventually killed himself. That was an issue about one thing about money, because if his family had the $30,000 bail, which is, we all know is 10%, which is $3,000, he would not have the physical and mental abuse that he had there, and he was able to speak his truth. Oftentimes, people are not able to speak the truth because they don't have the money to properly represent themselves. Or if we're in a financial hole, we have some type of stress and they don't make the best decision
Yeah.
because we're back against the wall. And the money is supposed to be an option, so we don't always have to have our back against the wall and do make short-term decisions that affect us poorly in the long term, just because we're trying to survive.
That's a mic dropper. And it's really true that you see in underserved communities, because of lack of money, poor health care happens. There's a medical disparity that people don't go to the doctor and people make fun. But the reality is, if your deductible is $25 and that's all you have in your hand, and feeding your children, you can go to McDonald's and spend that $25. That's where you're going. And that's why high blood pressure and things go untreated and people stroke out in these communities. Things like that. Things like being able to eat good food. You know, we talked about food deserts in Oakland. I talk about them all the time because I live in a community where I'm surrounded by food, good food, variety of food. And that's not the case in places in East Oakland. And, so we've got to get to the common good, and finances is that place, that equalizer. I know in Oakland, another project that's happening is that they're giving income to some families. It's a pilot project. It's similar to what was done by the mayor down there in Fresno, where they gave right?
Yeah, Mayor Tubbs.
Yeah, so they're doing that in Oakland also. So, and for those people, because I think I need to speak to them, and Jason, we're going to sign off, but I want to speak to this. There are people out there, because the person said this to me. They said, because we were in a conversation, I don't debate with anybody. I'm always trying to have conversations. So the person said to me, your race is the only race of people that, and they use this terminology, they said, that immigrated to this country and never really have put your foot in the right way. First, I had to correct their historic history. We did not immigrate here. African Americans, Black, Negroes, whatever you're calling them for whatever era you come from, actually are a stolen people. There is no Black person on American soil unless they are African, true-born Africans that have come here on their own, that immigrated. My family did not come through Ellis Island. My daughter proved that to me when she was in middle school and went to New York and looked for our family name in Ellis Island. And I had forgotten to share that historical moment with her, and then had to share it over the phone that she wouldn't find our family there because we didn't come that way. So first of all, for those of you who always are saying Black people need to do better, Black people, and I agree with you. Yes, as a community, we need to do better. But stop thinking that we started in the same place as everybody else, because we didn't. And that is a story that we need to be telling. And then we need to be, Black people, we need to stop spending so much money in communities and in places where people have no respect for you. Stop spending your money where you are not liked or respected, and all that's respected is the fact that you come in there and drop your dollars. And when we stop doing that and really understanding the finances, stop spending your money on the bling bling and the biggest car and all that stuff that you're emulating, that you think is going to give you the life that you want. It's not. You're going to keep chasing it. And because you're always going to want the more shinier car, you're always going to want the bigger house. And again, you emulate something that really isn't good at all. Because really and truly, if you don't have 5 people in your house, why do you have 5 bedrooms? I'm just saying. I don't care how wealthy you are. And if you're not inviting someone in who's unsheltered to sleep in the other 4 bedrooms that you're not sleeping in, then why? That's gluttony. That's excess. And then you're going to say to me, don't tell me how to spend my money. And you're right. I'm not telling you how to spend your money. But at the end of the day, we have too many people. I'm driving by people living on what we're now calling sidewalk communities. No, that's not a sidewalk community. That's unsheltered people living in tents on the sidewalk. I watched a man take his daughter out into the middle of the street to walk around the tents on Telegraph. Something's wrong. There's no equity and no equality there if I get to go live in my house and somebody's sleeping on the concrete. And then you might say to me, well, take them to your house. And I'll say to you, I have. So no matter what you say about I earned it, this is let them pick them up by their bootstraps. I can share a story with you where that may not be the case. It's about the common good. Jason has explained to us, it's about the common good. Even money is about the common good. And some of us work really hard for our money. All of us work really hard. Even those folks, I know people working 4 jobs right now. I know people here at ASEP are working 2 jobs. So at the end of the day, let's work together. Understand money, teach your children about money, make it not a racial thing or a gender thing. Why do women still make less money than men holding the same titles? Why? All that stuff. And Jason has come to share with us, a wealth of information. I'm going to have him back because I think he and I have something going here, where we can share information with you. And then, maybe we need to have a seminar. I know we talked about pulling that together. The summer got busy and we didn't. But maybe in the early fall, as we hear more about the tax breaks that I know President Biden is looking at along with Congress, as we learn more about reparations, as we learn more about what they're doing with the colleges, because I think, Jason, that's the next big hit to us. Students aren't going to be able to pay their debt.
No.
Because we put them in debt. First, we say to you, you can't get a job without a degree. I'm just saying, folks. Because who wants to make $15, $12 an hour when you can't pay the $3,000, $4,000 rent with that? So you say, go get a college degree. Then you say, oh, that BS is not enough. Go get that master's. Then some of us are we go and get the PhD. We come out here and then we have debt. Debt that we're going to take to the grave. And that's not good. So again, thank you, Jason Matthews, I know you do have a platform also that you come on Facebook and you share financial information. I know you've written a couple of books. Do you want to share the title of those books so that people can find them?
Yeah, so I wrote the book. The book is called, you can get it on Amazon. Speaking of Amazon, The Age of Self-Reliance. The Age of Self-Reliance. And I think you made a great point. And I'm glad I'm here about higher education. I think one thing somebody said is we might also start looking back into the trades. College might not be for everybody, but the trades there's nothing wrong with going to the trades, being a carpenter, a mechanic, and doing the trades. That's also a great option that we forgot about. We don't talk about it enough.
And I thank you for that, because my last statement, my friends, when I grew up and went to high school, Brighton High, Brighton, Massachusetts, we had carpentry shop, mechanic, cooking, people who were going to go into hotel resort tourism, bippity booba. This is in the 70s. And then you had your business track and you had your college track. So everybody who graduated was able to graduate and figure out what their purpose was. Those of us, I was college track, so I went that way. And there were others who went other ways. But you know what? I just did a high school reunion. I graduated in 75, but we just had a reunion. And you know what? Everybody has done well. The people in the trades have done well. The people who went off to college did well because we were given options. Nobody said to us, you got to do this in order to have this. And I just say we need to get back to that. It goes back to bringing, Jason, what we talked about earlier. If we bring all those businesses back to this country, the manufacturing back to this country, cars, everything, what would happen to the world? Detroit wouldn't look like Detroit looks now. Flint would finally have clean water. I'm going to keep bringing that up because I just found out they still don't have clean water. And I'm just saying, shame on you, America. I'm just saying, because there's babies dying drinking that damn water because it's got feces and it's got all kinds of bad things. And I'm just saying, that's way too long. I think that's over 5 years now. It's a long time. I know it's more than one that they have been without proper drinking water. Get that right. Because it's in a community that if you're telling me there's no racism in America or an implicit bias, then they should be drinking clean water by now. I'm just saying. So, you have joined Life is a Sacred Journey, and I know you don't always agree with me, but that's life, right? We don't have to agree with each other, but I'm never going to debate with you because I'm just sharing my thoughts. And I want to thank Jason Matthews, one, for living out his purpose going into this field. He's a great community leader. He goes out and talks to young people and explains to them about money. He's really trying to get to brown and black people to help them to become wealthy in the true sense, as well as to just maintain and live a good quality life. He's also working with other folks. And again, I don't want you to think that, when I say that he doesn't work with white people. I mean, we get so caught up in all this race and gender and whatever. I just point that out because Black people and brown people don't know about stocks. And I mean, we do have a group that does, but there's a whole bunch across the spectrum. They don't know about 401k, 403b stock, penny stock, none of that. So that's why I brought that up, because I don't want you to think that this is a racist platform, because it's not. It's just that as a Black person, I also have to promote the success of my people. That's just the way it is. So Life is a Sacred Journey is welcomed into your house every Friday morning at 8 a.m. I want to thank you for that. And Jason, I want to thank you for everything that you're doing in the community. And I know that I have benefited from our relationship. And yeah, next time you're here, we're going to talk about my retirement, because I think I'm in trouble after today. I might have to stay here at ASAP way. But he'll take care of me. We'll figure it out. Jason, is there one last thing you would like to share with folks before we say adieu?
No, I'll just say thank you so much for having me on this. I really do appreciate it. This is really good. Thank you so much for letting me be on this.
You're welcome. And Felicia will do what Felicia does and get a copy to you to share on your platforms and to share throughout. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Be good to yourself. Be the change you want to see. Stop complaining about other people. Look at yourself in the mirror. See if you're doing the same things. I had to do that this morning because I'm crotchety. But love is the gift that we give to each other, no matter how we give it. Give it abundantly. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Peace out.